Today's lesson is on subtracting using a thermometer, and it will cover pages 140 to 141. A thermometer is basically like a vertical number line. So we have the positive numbers at the top when it's warmer, and the negative numbers at the bottom when it is colder. Question A is going to ask you a series of questions. So the first part might be something like, if the temperature is 5 degrees and it drops 2 degrees, the temperature becomes 5 minus 2 degrees. So we start at 5 on our number line and we go down 2 degrees. So it becomes 3 degrees. They might also ask you the reverse of these numbers. So if the temperature is 2 degrees and it drops 5 degrees, the temperature becomes 2 minus 5. So this time we would start at 2 and we would go down 5 degrees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we would end up at -3. Eventually, they'll start wording them so that it's just two number sentences. So 6 minus 4 equals and 4 minus 6. So I'm going to use blue this time to help keep track. And I need to add a positive 6 to the top of my temperature. So if I start at 6 and I subtract 4 degrees, so I go down 1, 2, 3, 4. So I would end up at +2. But if I start at 4 and I subtract 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I end up at -2. 2A is going to ask you to look at the answers that you have found and compare how A minus B is different from B minus A. So if we were to look at the first example, 5 and 2 would be our A and B. So we'd have A minus B is 3, +3, and B minus A is -3. Okay, so we'd have 3 versus -3. Then if we did 6 and 4, A minus B is 2. And when we switch the order and go B minus A, we get -2. So what is the difference in those answers? Your hint is to look at the signs. Based on what you discover in part A, they want you to make a prediction about what you think 98 minus 101 would be. And then for part C, you get to use your calculator to check and see if you were correct. Question 3 asks you to use the thermometer model to complete the subtraction questions. So our first one is -3 minus 4. So I start at my first number, -3, and dropping 4 degrees is what -4 means. So I'm going to go down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that leaves me at -7. Then I'm going to use another color to do the second question. So -4 minus 3. So now I'm starting at -4 and I'm going down 3. 1, 2, 3. And it actually gives us the same answer of -7. Question 4 asks you to look at the answers from question 3. So they want to know how -A minus B compares to -B minus A. So if we match these up, -A minus B, which means that our A is 3, B is 4. So if we look at the next one, -B minus A, we should see that in both examples, the A is always replacing the 3 and the B is always replacing the 4. So what do you notice about the two answers? The last part of number 4 is going to ask you how both of these, the -A minus B and -B minus A, compare to A plus B. So if we figured out from up top that A is 3 and B is 4, A is 3, B is 4, then A plus B would just be 3 plus 4, which would give us 7. So how does 7 compare with the two answers that you got above for the other questions? Question 5 asks you to do a little bit of reversing. So they want you to start with your first line being the negative integer minus the positive integer, and then to switch the order and do the negative integer, or the positive integer minus the negative integer. So you can still use a number line if you would like to, or a thermometer model. They'll have one available. 3, 2, 1, 0, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. So our first one is -2 minus 3. So go down 1, 2, 3 is -5. So in question 4, you will hopefully have figured out that when you flip the order, it reverses the sign. So they would then argue that the reversal of -5 would be +5. So 3 minus -2 is +5. Question 6 asks you to copy each answer from question 5 and then look at how do you get the same answer by adding instead of subtracting. So if we look 3 minus -2, that's the same question we have here. So our answer is +5. So that's our step of copying each answer. Then we have to figure out how we could add to also get +5. So if we had 3 plus, what would we add to 3 to get +5? Well, we would add a +2. So this tells us that 3 minus -2 is the same thing as 3 plus +2. Question 7 is going to also lead you to look back a little bit. In general, A minus -B gives the same result as A plus. So if we look here, when we subtracted a negative, we added a positive. So it'd be like by adding it by plus B, which if you think about it with our directions makes sense, because when we were subtracting a negative, we moved to the right, and when we add a positive, we also move to the right. Question 8 is going to ask us to put this into practice. So our first step is to change the subtraction of a negative into the addition of a positive. So when we change our subtraction sign, we're also going to change the sign that comes before the next integer. So 4 minus -2 is the same thing as 4 plus +2. And +2 is the same thing as 2, so we don't have to include the extra sign if we don't want. And then 4 plus 2 is 6. Question 9 will get you to put this into practice a little bit of a different way, and they're going to get you to use the thermometer model. So they say when you subtract a positive, we're going to go down the thermometer, and when you subtract a negative, we're going to move up the thermometer. So if we look at our first one, 3 minus +5, right? If it's 3 minus 5, that's the same thing as minus +5. So when we subtract a positive, we're moving down. So we'll start at -3 and we'll go down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we will end at -8. If we're subtracting a negative, we're going to move up the thermometer. So we would start at the same place at -3 and go up 5 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we would end up with +2. So just remember which order we're going. Subtract a positive, we go down. Subtract a negative, we go up. There will be a Google form attached to this assignment. Please fill it out, submit, and turn in. And remember, you can always send me a message if you would like help with this lesson, because I know they are getting a little bit trickier as we go along.